It's been 11 years since Abby and I split up, and honestly, I thought we'd moved past most of the drama. We figured out a decent system for the kids, Emma, who's 16 now, and Noah, who just turned 14. The 50-50 custody arrangement worked fine, at least on paper. We split everything evenly, school fees, medical bills, you name it. No child support, no unnecessary arguments. I thought we were doing okay, co-parenting-wise. From the moment Emma was born, I started thinking about her future. I wasn't earning much back then, but I opened a small savings account in her name. When Noah came along a couple of years later, I did the same for him. Little by little, I set money aside whenever I could. Nothing extravagant, but enough to make me feel like I was doing something meaningful for them. About 6 years ago, I got hurt on the job, a bad fall at a construction site. It wasn't life-altering, but it took me out of work for months. The settlement I got wasn't huge, but it was enough to make a difference. I knew exactly what I wanted to do with it. I took a chunk of that money and divided it between Emma and Noah's accounts. I didn't tell Abby. It didn't seem necessary. Then, 4 years ago, my aunt passed away. I barely knew her. She was the type to send a Christmas card every year but never call. Turns out, she left me a small inheritance. Nothing crazy, but enough to ease some stress. I added it to the kids' savings. By then, both accounts were in solid shape. I felt good knowing they'd have options: college, starting a business, traveling the world, whatever they wanted. Meanwhile, Abby remarried a guy named Greg. He seemed fine at first, quiet, a bit awkward, but nothing that raised any red flags. He had a daughter, Chloe, from a previous relationship, and together, he and Abby had twin boys. On top of that, Greg's teenage nephew moved in with them last year. Suddenly, they had a house full of kids. At first, I didn't pay much attention to their situation. We had separate lives, and as long as the kids were happy, I didn't see any reason to get involved. But a few months ago, Abby called me out of the blue and said we needed to talk about college for Emma and Noah. I figured it was a normal conversation about options, financial aid, choosing schools, that kind of thing. So, we met up at a coffee shop. She started off talking about how she and Greg had sat their kids down for a family discussion about college costs. She said they'd explained that community college would probably be the best option for everyone because it was affordable. That's when she hit me with, "But we could probably help Emma and Noah a little more, right?" I wasn't sure what she meant, so I told her I'd been saving for them since they were born. She looked stunned, like it had never occurred to her that I might have planned ahead. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, almost accusingly. I shrugged. Why would I? I've always handled things for the kids. This doesn't affect you. She didn't like that answer. Her face tightened, but she didn't say much after that. I thought maybe that was the end of it. A few days later, she called again, and this time Greg was on the line. The second I heard his voice, I knew it wasn't going to be a pleasant conversation. Abby started talking about how tight money was with all the kids in the house, and Greg jumped in, saying, "We were hoping you could start contributing more, just for a few years. It'd really help us save for everyone's college." I couldn't believe it. Wait, you're asking me to pay child support? For the kids we already split everything for equally? No, not exactly, Greg said. We're just saying, maybe you could pitch in a little extra to help level the playing field. You know, for the other kids. They're Emma and Noah's siblings, after all. It's only fair. Fair, I said, almost laughing. My responsibility begins and ends with Emma and Noah. Your kids are not my responsibility. Abby tried to step in, saying I was being unreasonable, but I cut her off. I'm not paying for your household, Abby. If you and Greg are struggling, that's on you. I've worked hard to make sure Emma and Noah are taken care of, and I'm not about to compromise their futures because you two can't manage your finances. The conversation didn't end well, to say the least. Greg started throwing out words like selfish and cruel, and Abby backed him up. I hung up before I said something I'd regret, but I was fuming. I thought that would be the end of it. How many times can someone hear no before they move on? But I was wrong. That was just the beginning. A week later, I was sitting at home, finally feeling like things had calmed down, when Emma walked into the kitchen looking upset. She put her bag down on the counter a little harder than usual, grabbed a glass of water, and stood there without saying anything. I could tell something was on her mind. "What's up?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She hesitated, looking like she didn't want to say whatever was bothering her. Finally, she blurted out, "Mom keeps talking about my college fund." That caught me off guard. "What do you mean? What's she saying?" Emma sighed and sat down at the table. "She said I should think about sharing it. She keeps bringing up Chloe and the twins and how they won't have the same opportunities. She said it's only fair because we're all family now." I felt my stomach drop. "She told you that?" Emma nodded, looking uncomfortable. "She didn't say I had to, but she made it sound like, I don't know, like it's the right thing to do. Like I'd be selfish if I didn't." I took a deep breath, trying not to let my frustration show. "Emma, listen to me. That money is yours. It's for your future, not anyone else's. You don't need to feel guilty about it." She looked at me, her face still tense. "I know, but it's hard. She keeps saying stuff like how family is supposed to help each other, and, I don't know, it just makes me feel bad." I hated seeing her like that, caught in the middle of something she didn't deserve to be a part of. "You don't owe anyone your future," I said firmly. "I've been saving for you and Noah since you were little. That money is for whatever you decide to do, whether it's college, starting a business, or something else. Don't let anyone make you feel like you have to give it up." Emma nodded, but I could tell she wasn't fully convinced. That's the kind of person she is, always wanting to do the right thing, even if it means putting herself last. The next day, I texted Abby and told her we needed to talk. I didn't want to escalate things, but this was crossing a line. We met at the same coffee shop as before, and the second she sat down, I could tell she was ready to argue. "What's this about?" she asked, her tone defensive. "It's about Emma," I said. "She told me you've been talking to her about sharing her college fund." Abby rolled her eyes. "I'm not telling her to share it. I'm just teaching her about family and responsibility. It's important for her to understand that life isn't just about herself." I could feel my patience slipping. "She's 16, Abby. She shouldn't have to worry about anyone else's college fund. That's your job and Greg's, not hers." Abby shrugged, like it wasn't a big deal. "I'm just trying to prepare her for the real world. You don't get everything handed to you on a silver platter, you know? That's rich, coming from someone asking me to foot the bill for their entire household." I shot back. "This isn't about teaching life lessons. This is about you trying to solve your financial problems by dragging Emma into it. You need to stop." Abby's expression darkened. "You don't understand how hard it is for us. We're trying our best, but it's not easy with so many kids." I leaned forward, keeping my voice calm but firm. "That's not Emma's fault, and it's not her responsibility to fix it. If you keep pressuring her, I'm going to take action. I don't want to, but I will if it means protecting her and Noah from this." Abby glared at me, but she didn't argue. After a tense pause, she said, "Fine, I'll back off. But don't come crying to me when they grow up selfish and entitled." I ignored the jab and left, hoping she'd actually listen for once. But just a few days later, Noah came home from his mom's house, looking irritated. "Chris keeps making comments," he said. "What kind of comments?" I asked. "Stuff like, 'Oh, must be nice to have a dad who's got it all figured out,' or 'Guess you don't have to worry about college like the rest of us.' He thinks it's funny, but it's not. It's annoying." Hearing that made my blood boil. Not only was Abby putting pressure on Emma, but now Chris was trying to guilt-trip Noah. I asked him how he felt about it, and he just shrugged. "I don't care what he says. It's just annoying, you know?" I nodded, trying to keep my anger in check. "If he says anything else, you let me know, okay? You don't have to deal with that." That night, I called Abby again. "I don't know what you think you're doing, but it stops now," I said. "You and Chris need to leave the kids out of this. If I hear one more word about college funds or guilt trips, we're going to have a serious problem." She tried to deny it, saying I was overreacting, but I wasn't having it. "This is your last warning," I said. "Figure it out, or I will." I hung up, feeling like I was talking to a brick wall. Deep down, I knew she wasn't going to stop, but I wasn't going to let her or Chris drag the kids into their mess without a fight. A couple of weeks went by, and I thought maybe the message had finally sunk in. Abby hadn't called, and the kids seemed to be doing okay. But of course, It was only a matter of time before things took another turn. One day, I got a call from Noah's school. His teacher said he'd been acting out, getting into arguments, not paying attention in class, and his grades were slipping. That was a red flag. Noah was a laid-back kid who rarely caused trouble, so I knew something was off. That evening, I sat him down at the kitchen table. "Noah, what's going on at school?" He shrugged, avoiding my eyes. "Nothing. It's just school stuff." "Come on, buddy. This isn't like you. Did something happen?" He hesitated for a moment, then sighed. "It's just, I hate being at Mom's house. Every time I'm there, it's like all they talk about is money. Chris keeps making these comments about how easy me and Emma have it, and Mom's always stressed. It feels like I shouldn't even be there." Hearing that hit me hard. I asked him why he hadn't told me sooner, and he just shrugged again. "I didn't want to make it a big deal," he said quietly. "I know you and Mom are already arguing about stuff." I took a deep breath, trying to push down the frustration bubbling up inside me. "Noah, you're not the reason for any of this, okay? None of it is your fault. And you shouldn't have to feel like you don't belong anywhere. You belong here, and you belong with your mom, too. This is her issue, not yours." He nodded, but I could tell it wasn't enough to make him feel better. The next day, I called Abby again. I wasn't in the mood for pleasantries, so I got straight to the point. "Noah says he's miserable at your house because all you and Chris do is talk about money. What the hell are you doing to these kids?" Abby immediately got defensive. "Oh, come on. That's not true. We're just trying to be honest with them about how things are." "There's a difference between being honest and making them feel guilty," I snapped. "Noah thinks he doesn't belong in his own family because of the way you two act. Do you have any idea how messed up that is?" Abby let out an annoyed sigh. "You're blowing this way out of proportion." "No, I'm not," I said firmly. "I'm telling you right now, this has to stop. Leave the kids out of your financial problems, or I'm taking this to court. And this time, I'm not bluffing." That shut her up for a moment, but then she said, "You're making things worse by threatening me. We're trying our best, okay? Maybe if you weren't so stubborn, things would be easier for everyone." "I'm not being stubborn, Abby. I'm protecting my kids. That's my job. Maybe you should start doing yours." I hung up before the conversation could spiral any further. I knew it wouldn't fix everything, but I'd made my point again. That weekend, Emma came home from her mom's looking more upset than I'd ever seen her. She dropped her bag on the floor and sat down on the couch without a word. I sat next to her and waited for her to say something. After a long pause, she said, "Mom's mad at me. She said I'm being selfish and that you've turned me against her." I frowned. "Why is she saying that?" "She asked me again about sharing the money," Emma said, her voice trembling. "I told her no, and she freaked out. She said I don't care about my family and that I've been brainwashed by you. She said if I really loved my siblings, I'd help them." I felt my hands clench into fists. "Emma, listen to me. None of this is your fault. You're not selfish, and you're not brainwashed. You're standing up for yourself, and that's exactly what you should be doing. I'm proud of you for that." Tears welled up in her eyes, and she wiped them away quickly. "It just sucks, you know? I feel like no matter what I do, I'm the bad guy." "You're not the bad guy," I said gently. "Your mom is putting you in an impossible position, and that's not fair to you. You shouldn't have to deal with any of this." Emma nodded, but I could see how much the situation was weighing on her. It killed me to see her like that, but I knew I couldn't let Abby keep doing this to her. Or to Noah. That night, I sent Abby a long text. I told her that if she didn't stop pressuring the kids and making them feel guilty, I'd go to court and fight for full custody. "I'm done giving you chances," I wrote. "This is your last warning." She didn't reply, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to let her drag my kids into her mess anymore. A couple of weeks after I sent that text, I noticed that things had gone eerily quiet. No calls, no text from Abby, and the kids didn't mention any new drama at their mom's house. Part of me wanted to believe she'd finally backed off, but I wasn't naive enough to think it was over. I knew Abby too well. Silence usually meant she was scheming. Then one day, while I was at work, I got a text from Emma. "Can we talk later? Something happened at Mom's." I called her as soon as I could. She answered quickly, but her voice was shaky. "It's nothing big," she said. I think you should know about it." "Okay," I said carefully. "What's going on?" She sighed. "Mom had this big talk with all of us last night. She said we're a family, and families make sacrifices for each other. Then she said I should reconsider sharing my college fund because it's the right thing to do." My grip on the phone tightened. "What did you say?" "I told her no again," Emma said, her voice firmer now. But she wouldn't drop it. She said it's not fair for Chloe and the twins to struggle while I have everything handed to me. She called me selfish. "Dad, she's making me feel like a terrible person." "You're not a terrible person," I said immediately. "You did the right thing by standing your ground. I'm proud of you for that." Emma was quiet for a moment, then said, "It's just hard. I don't even want to go over there anymore." Hearing that was like a punch to the gut. I hated that she felt this way, but I understood it. "Emma, you don't have to go if you don't want to," I said. "You're old enough to make that decision." She hesitated. "I don't want to hurt Mom, but I can't keep doing this. It's too much." "We'll figure it out," I promised. "You don't have to deal with this alone." That night, I called Abby. I told myself I'd keep my cool, but as soon as she picked up, I let her have it. "What the hell are you doing, Abby? Why are you still pressuring Emma about this?" She didn't even try to deny it. "She's being selfish," she said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "She's part of this family. Why is it so wrong to expect her to contribute?" "Because she's a kid." I snapped. "She shouldn't have to sacrifice her future because you and Greg can't manage your finances. Do you even hear yourself?" Abby's tone turned cold. "You're the one making this worse. You've turned her against me. She doesn't even respect me anymore." "No, Abby," I said. "You've done that all by yourself. Emma doesn't respect you because you've made her feel like she's responsible for fixing your problems. That's on you, not me." She started to argue, but I cut her off. "This is the last time I'm saying this. Leave the kids out of it. If you bring this up with Emma or Noah again, I will go to court and I will fight for full custody. Don't test me on this." She hung up on me, but I didn't care. I was done playing nice. The next day, Noah came home looking frustrated. "Mom's mad at Emma," he said. "She told her she's acting like she's better than everyone else. And Chris, he's being a jerk about it too." "What did he say?" I asked. "Stuff like, must be nice to have daddy's money, and guess we know who the favorite kid is." Noah rolled his eyes. "He thinks he's funny, but it's just annoying." I clenched my jaw, trying to keep my anger in check. "You don't have to put up with that," I said. "If he says anything else, tell him to talk to me. You don't need to deal with his crap." Noah shrugged, but I could tell it was getting to him. "It's fine," he muttered. "It's not fine," I said firmly. "None of this is fine, and I'm going to make sure it stops." That night, I sat down with both Emma and Noah. I told them the same thing I'd been telling them all along. They weren't responsible for their mom's household, and they didn't owe anyone anything. "If you ever feel like it's too much, you tell me," I said. "We'll figure it out together." They both nodded, but I could see the exhaustion in their eyes. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about the constant tension, the guilt, the feeling of being caught in the middle. I knew I had to do something more. Abby wasn't going to stop unless I forced her to, and for the sake of my kids, I was ready to do whatever it took. A couple of weeks after that, things finally hit a breaking point. Abby wasn't backing off, and the kids were still coming home upset after their weekends at her house. Emma had grown quieter, keeping her head down and focusing on school, but I could tell she was carrying the weight of the situation. Noah, on the other hand, was starting to act out more, snapping at little things, staying holed up in his room, and avoiding conversations altogether. One night, after dinner, Noah finally let it all out. "Why do we even have to go to Mom's anymore?" he said, pushing his plate away. "It's not fun. It's not relaxing. It's just her and Chris complaining about money and making us feel like we're the problem." I set down my fork, trying to stay calm for his sake. "What do you mean by that? They just talk about us like we're spoiled or something. Like it's our fault we're not struggling like the other kids. Chris always has some dumb comment, and Mom doesn't even stop him. It's like she's fine with it." I looked over at Emma, who was staring at her lap. "Emma?" I asked gently. She hesitated before nodding. "It's true," she said quietly. "It's been like that for a while. They don't say it to our faces all the time, but we hear them. It's like we're supposed to feel bad for having anything." Noah crossed his arms. "I'm done feeling bad about it. It's not fair. I don't want to go over there anymore." Emma didn't say anything, but the way she glanced at me told me she felt the same. I leaned back in my chair, trying to process what they were telling me. I didn't want to overreact, but at the same time, I couldn't ignore how much this was affecting them. "Look," I said, "you don't have to keep doing something that makes you miserable. If you don't want to go to your mom's, we can talk about it. But it's a big decision, and I want to make sure it's what you both really want." "I'm sure," Noah said without hesitation. "I'm done." Emma took a little longer to respond. I think I'm done too," she said finally. "I love Mom, but it's just too much. I don't feel like myself when I'm there." Hearing that broke my heart, but I knew it was the right call. "Okay," I said. "If that's what you want, we'll make it happen. I'll talk to your mom and figure out the next steps." The next day, I called Abby. She answered with her usual clipped tone, and I could tell she was already expecting a fight. "What now?" she said, sounding annoyed. "We need to talk," I said. "The kids don't want to come over anymore." There was a pause, then a bitter laugh. "Oh, so you've finally turned them against me completely? Congratulations." "This isn't about me," I said. "This is about how they feel when they're at your house. They're tired of the comments, the guilt trips, all of it. They need a break, Abby." "They're kids," she snapped. "They don't get to make that decision. They need structure, not whatever fantasy you've been feeding them about living with you full-time. They're old enough to know what makes them happy," I said, keeping my voice calm despite her tone. "And right now, they're not happy with how things are. You can't just brush that off." She went on a rant about how I was ruining everything, how I'd made her the villain in her own children's eyes, and how I had no right to let them dictate where they lived. I let her vent, knowing there was no reasoning with her in that moment. When she finally stopped, I said, "This is happening, Abby. Either we work something out, or we take it to court. Your choice." She hung up on me, but I didn't care. I'd expected as much. The next few days were tense. Abby didn't call or text, and I didn't push her. I used the time to talk to Emma and Noah about what they wanted and how they felt. They were both adamant that they didn't want to go back, at least not for a while. Eventually, Abby reached out, but it wasn't to talk. Instead, I got an email from her lawyer. She was filing for a formal custody review, claiming I'd manipulated the kids into refusing to visit her. When I showed the email to my lawyer, she rolled her eyes. "This isn't going to go the way she thinks it will," she said. "She's clearly trying to retaliate, but as long as the kids are consistent about what they want, the court will listen to them." We prepared for the hearing, gathering evidence of everything that had been going on. Texts from Abby pressuring Emma about the college fund, notes from Noah's teacher about his behavior, and even a few recorded conversations the kids had shared with me about what was happening at their mom's house. The day of the hearing, Emma and Noah were nervous, but they were also ready to speak up. When it was their turn to talk, they told the judge everything. How they felt at their mom's house, the pressure, the comments, the guilt. Emma spoke calmly, but I could see the pain in her eyes. Noah was more direct, saying flat out that he didn't want to go back unless things changed. By the end of the hearing, the judge ruled in our favor. Abby kept her visitation rights, but the kids were no longer required to go if they didn't want to. It was their choice now, and I could tell that decision gave them a sense of relief they hadn't felt in a long time. Abby didn't take it well. She stormed out of the courtroom without looking at me or the kids, but for the first time, I didn't care. My priority was Emma and Noah, and I knew they were finally getting the peace they deserved. After the court hearing, things felt different, lighter. Emma and Noah were finally able to relax, knowing they wouldn't have to deal with the constant guilt and tension at their mom's house. For the first time in what felt like forever, our home started to feel like a place where they could just be kids again. But, of course, it wasn't completely over. Abby wasn't the type to let things go quietly. A week after the ruling, I got a long, bitter text from her. It was the usual, how I'd ruined her relationship with the kids, how unfair it was that I got everything, and how she was struggling to make ends meet while I sat back and played the hero. I didn't bother responding. There was no point. I knew she was lashing out because she'd lost control of the situation, and honestly, I didn't have the energy to engage anymore. My focus was on Emma and Noah, not her anger. The kids settled into their new routine quickly. They decided to visit their mom occasionally, but only when they felt like it. Emma, being the thoughtful one, tried to maintain some kind of relationship with Abby, but she kept firm boundaries. She wouldn't entertain any discussions about money or the college fund, and she let me know right away if anything inappropriate came up. Noah, on the other hand, was less forgiving. He refused to visit for the first couple of months, saying he needed time to cool off. Eventually, he agreed to spend a weekend there, but only after Abby promised not to bring up anything related to finances. When he came back, he shrugged and said, "It was fine, I guess, but I'm glad I don't have to be there all the time." As the months went by, the kids started to thrive. Emma threw herself into her schoolwork and began touring colleges. Seeing her so focused and excited reminded me why I'd fought so hard for her. She was finally able to think about her future without the weight of someone else's expectations holding her back. Noah, meanwhile, got back to being himself, goofy, laid back, and always ready with a sarcastic comment. His grades improved, and he even joined the school basketball team, something he'd been hesitant to try before. One evening, as we sat around the dinner table, Noah said, "You know, it's weird. It's like things are normal now. I didn't even realize how stressful it was before." Emma nodded. "Yeah, it's nice not having to feel guilty all the time." I looked at them, feeling a mix of pride and relief. "You guys deserve this," I said. "You've been through so much, and I'm just glad you can finally focus on being yourselves." Not long after that, I got another email from Abby. This one wasn't angry, surprisingly. She wrote that she was trying to do better, that she'd started budgeting more carefully, and that she hoped to rebuild her relationship with the kids in time. I didn't know if she meant it or if it was just another attempt to save face, but it didn't really matter. The kids had control now, and I trusted them to make the decisions that were right for them. Life moved on, and so did we. Emma started preparing for college, and Noah kept excelling in school and sports. I finally felt like I could breathe again, knowing that I'd done everything I could to protect them. Every now and then, Abby would pop up with a comment or a complaint, but it didn't carry the same weight it used to. The kids had grown stronger through all of this, and so had I. Looking back, I realized that the whole ordeal wasn't just about money or custody. It was about standing up for what was right. It was about showing Emma and Noah that they didn't have to carry other people's burdens, that their futures mattered, and that they were worth fighting for. In the end, I'm proud of how we came through it all. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't perfect, but we found our way. And now, no matter what the future holds, I know we're ready for it, together.